In the vast, unpredictable waters of the Caribbean Sea, a high-stakes drama unfolded that could have easily spiraled into a major international incident. Picture this: the mighty USS George Washington, a Nimitz-class supercarrier and the heart of a U.S. Navy carrier strike group, was conducting routine freedom of navigation operations. Suddenly, on the horizon, a flotilla of Venezuelan vessels appeared, their intentions anything but friendly. 30 of them, a mix of patrol boats and other naval assets, were on a direct course to intercept the American carrier. Their mission: to block the path of one of the most powerful naval forces on the planet. What happened next was a masterclass in naval professionalism, de-escalation, and a stark reminder of the massive technological and tactical gap between the world as premier navy and a regional power. This wasn't just a simple standoff. It was a calculated move by Venezuela, a nation grappling with internal turmoil and eager to project strength on the international stage. But challenging a U.S. carrier strike group is like poking a sleeping bear, and the Venezuelan Navy was about to learn a very hard lesson. Let's set the scene. The Caribbean Sea is a critical maritime crossroads, vital for global trade and a region where the United States has long maintained a significant presence to ensure stability and security. For the U.S. Navy, freedom of navigation operations, or FONOPs, are standard procedure. They were designed to challenge excessive maritime claims by other countries and assert the right of free passage in international waters as guaranteed under international law. So, when the USS George Washington and its escorts, including cruisers, destroyers, and submarines, steamed through these waters, it was business as usual. The carrier itself is a floating city, a 4.5-acre slice of American sovereign territory, home to over 5,000 sailors and aviators, and carrying a wing of more than 60 advanced aircraft. It's not just a ship, it's a symbol of American power and reach, capable of projecting overwhelming force anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. On this particular day, the carrier was operating under the watchful eye of its Combat Information Center, or CIC, the nerve center of the ship where sailors monitor a complex array of sensors tracking every contact in the air, on the surface, and beneath the waves for hundreds of miles in every direction. Meanwhile, the political climate in Venezuela was tense. The country's leadership has often used anti-American rhetoric to rally domestic support and distract from internal problems. So, sending a naval force to challenge a U.S. carrier could be seen as a bold, nationalistic statement. The Venezuelan flotilla, while numerous, was a David against a Goliath. It consisted mainly of smaller patrol boats, perhaps some frigates, but nothing that could realistically stand up to the firepower of a U.S. carrier strike group. Their plan, it seems, was to use their numbers to form a blockade, to physically obstruct the carrier's path and create a media spectacle. It was a risky gamble, predicated on the hope that the Americans would back down to avoid a confrontation. From the bridge of the USS George Washington, the approaching contacts would have appeared as a swarm of blips on the radar. The ship's lookouts would have confirmed the visual sightings, identifying the vessels as Venezuelan naval units. The atmosphere in the CIC would have been calm, but intensely focused. This is precisely the kind of scenario that U.S. Navy crews train for relentlessly. As the Venezuelan ships closed the distance, the standard procedures for de-escalation would have kicked in. The first step is always communication. The USS George Washington would have hailed the Venezuelan lead ship on bridge-to-bridge radio, using the International Maritime Channel 16. The message would have been clear and professional. Venezuelan naval vessel. This is United States Navy warship. We are conducting lawful operations in international waters. We intend to maintain our present course and speed. We advise you to maintain a safe distance and not impede our passage. This communication serves two purposes. It makes the U.S. intentions perfectly clear, and it creates a legal record of the event. But the Venezuelans were determined. They ignored the initial calls and continued their approach, their formation tightening as they prepared to block the carrier's path. Now the situation was escalating. The American commanders had to make a decision. They could alter course, which might be interpreted as backing down, or they could hold their ground and force the issue. For a U.S. Navy warship, especially a carrier, yielding the right of way in international waters is simply not an option. It would set a dangerous precedent and embolden other nations to make similar challenges. So the carrier maintained its course. But this didn't mean they were passive. The strike group's commander would have ordered a heightened state of alert. On the carrier's flight deck, the Alert 5 aircraft would have been ready to launch within 5 minutes. These are typically F/A-18 Super Hornets, fully armed with air-to-air missiles. Their pilots strapped into the cockpit, engines ready to spool up. The escorts, the Ticonderoga-class cruisers and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, would have brought their powerful Aegis combat systems to a higher state of readiness. Their crews would be manning missile launchers and guns, prepared to defend the carrier at all costs. And to Hawkeye, the strike group's airborne early warning and control aircraft, would likely be circling high above, with its massive rotating radar dome. The Hawkeye provides a god's eye view of the entire battle space, tracking every move the Venezuelan ships made and feeding the data back to the strike group in real time. This is where the technological gap becomes a chasm. The US forces knew the exact position, course, speed, and even the type of every single Venezuelan vessel. The Venezuelans, on the other hand, were likely operating with much less information, essentially sailing into a situation where their opponent could see and hear everything they were doing. As the flotilla got dangerously close, the US response escalated, but not with weapons. Instead, they used a different kind of power, a demonstration of overwhelming capability. The Super Hornets likely launched from the deck of the George Washington. They wouldn't have been flying in an aggressive, threatening posture. Instead, they would have performed a low, high-speed pass near the Venezuelan ships. This is more than just a show of force. It's a powerful psychological message. The thunderous roar of jet fighters breaking the sound barrier just overhead is a visceral, intimidating experience. It says, "We are here, we are armed, and we are infinitely more capable than you are. We do not want to fight, but do not mistake our restraint for weakness." At the same time, one of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a vessel bristling with weaponry, would have likely detached from the formation and maneuvered expertly between the carrier and the lead Venezuelan ships. These destroyers are incredibly agile for their size, and their presence serves as a physical and psychological shield for the high-value carrier. The message from the destroyer's captain would be implicit. To get to the carrier, you have to go through me. And that is not a fight you can win. Faced with this multi-layered, firm but non-lethal response, the Venezuelan commanders were confronted with a new reality. Their plan to create a simple blockade had unraveled. They were now being outmaneuvered, outcommunicated, and stared down by vastly superior technology and air power. The low pass by the jets would have left no doubt in their minds about what would happen if they continued to escalate. The presence of the destroyer was a clear red line. To continue would be to risk the destruction of their ships and the lives of their sailors, all for a political stunt. The choice was clear. Discretion became the better part of valor. The Venezuelan flotilla broke formation. One by one, the ships altered course, turning away from the American carrier strike group. Their attempt to block the behemoth had failed. They had made a big mistake, overplaying their hand and underestimating the resolve and professionalism of the U.S. Navy. The USS George Washington and its escorts steamed on, their course unaltered, their mission unimpeded. The incident was over not with a bang, but with a whimper. The American response was a perfect example of what the military calls escalation dominance. They met the challenge with a response that was just firm enough to defuse the situation without firing a shot. They demonstrated capability, resolve, and incredible restraint. In the aftermath, the event likely received little official fanfare from the US side. For the Navy, this was just another day at the office. But for the Venezuelan Navy, it was a humiliating lesson. It exposed the limitations of their capabilities and the futility of trying to physically challenge the United States Navy on the open ocean. It highlighted that naval power isn't just about the number of ships you have. It's about technology, training, doctrine, and the will to use them effectively. The U.S. Navy's ability to see everything, communicate clearly, and demonstrate overwhelming force without resorting to violence is what truly sets it apart. This encounter in the Caribbean wasn't a battle, but it was a decisive victory for professionalism and de-escalation. It showed the world that while the U.S. Navy prefers peace, it is always prepared to assert its rights and defend its assets with unmatched power and precision. It was a silent but powerful message sent not just to Venezuela, but to any nation that might consider challenging the freedom of the seas. Thank you so much for watching. This story is a fascinating look into the complex world of modern naval operations, where psychology and technology are just as important as firepower. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into military history and technology. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this incident in the comments below. What do you think was going through the minds of the Venezuelan sailors? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious and thanks for being part of our community.